Welcome back to the video blog. Daniel Mezei is my name. Thanks again for watching. The light is going. This is getting very close to magic hour. I wanted to use the Harinazumi, but it just won't show up well, I think, with this little light. Thanks again for watching. So, Mitch Joel, again, somebody who I'm watching very often and whose posts I'm reading, who I'm learning a lot from, recently posted about this thing called interested or self-interested. In other words, if you're a brand or you're a company and you're online, and you're blogging or video blogging, or you're basically engaging your clients on a platform like Twitter, are you trying to drive interest to your products in a way that's kind of blatant and in a way that is quite transparent to your average consumer? In other words, they'll be reading a blog post by you. But rather than supplying them with critical information about a particular thing that you do or that you sell, or something that helps them get on with their day in terms of using your product in that way, what you're basically doing is you're masking the content in a way that basically gets them to want to engage in a buying decision. So that's kind of self-interested. As opposed to interesting, whereas, for example, you're a brand and you're involved in a particular industry. Say, let's say, for example, you're Walmart. This would be an interesting piece of content, which they'll never do, of course, but you're Walmart, which has the clout, the buying clout of Walmart, where basically they can invert the entire supply chain, where they can, for example, go to their various retailers and tell them, you know what, we'll let you sell in our store, but here's what you're going to sell us the stuff for, and this is what we're going to charge for to consumers. And then they kind of either accept that decision or not. Walmart, for example, can get into posts on, if they had such a blog, where they could write about labor conditions in China, where a lot of their products are manufactured, or, environmental concerns, for example, once again, in China. But they'll never do that. But that would be an interesting piece of content, as opposed to writing something that, of course, shouts and touts and just calls all manner of attention out to Walmart. That's just an example that comes to mind. As opposed to being interesting, which is just supplying information, helpful bits of information to people that are consuming your content, not necessarily with an associated hook back to your company so that people can hire you or buy from you, which they might end up doing anyway because they respect the information share that you're giving them. For example, Mitch Joel, perfect example, he's not actually lobbying you to become a client in his roster at twistimage.com. He's just basically supplying a bunch of marketing information to you, things that he finds, speeches that he listens to, podcasts that he subscribes to, and then he brings people on his show on 6 Pixels of Separation, and he gets you kind of thinking about different marketing ideas. That's interesting, that's worthwhile, that's content that people want to come into and check out on a regular basis. So, a lot of the content, unfortunately, that's out there online is not really relevant. In other words, this is what I wanted to talk about. That was the kind of the introduction, and now we're going to go into what I want to talk about. A lot of the stuff that's out there is really interesting and really well done, but it's not really relevant, okay? A lot of the content is just well composed. You can see that the person putting it together, if it's a blog post, really knows how to string sentences together, really has an ability to communicate properly. But it's not really something that you can use. You can't really get anything out of that information. It's not really relevant to your life. That kind of stops me sometimes from putting certain information out there, because I think that the act of blogging is a good routine exercise, that the more that you do it, the better that you get. And I can compare, let's say, my blogging activity today compared to 2009, when occasionally in 2009 I would have up to 3 different blog posts coming out a day on a lot of different subjects. My schedule was different then, and I was also involved with different industries, so I kind of had a lot of stuff that I wanted to share. Today I'm doing more video blogs and audio things because that's really where I'm at and that's what I like doing. Although I do miss the blogging part, but a lot of what stops me again from doing actual blogs is because, I don't think you necessarily want to read about the stuff that I'm interested in. For example, some of the books that I'm reading are not directly related to marketing or the film industry, but they do have a tangential relationship. So I'm not necessarily so keen to write that and spend maybe sometimes upwards of a couple of hours composing a message, editing it, shaping it, carving it, adapting it, whatever. I'm not so interested necessarily in doing that all the time. And that's what I mean by being relevant. Some of that is Interesting, but not relevant. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to you. It's not irrelevant to me, but it's irrelevant to you. And I understand that because I read a lot of blogs. I also understand that because I talk to people who consume my stuff, and I know what's interesting and what's not. And while I may have groupies, or I may have people that admire my material, or just like the way that I write, or my turns of phrase, or my comedic bent occasionally, or sometimes my balls-to-the-wall approach with my 4- and 7-letter words and things that I pepper in there, yeah, it's all fine and well, haha. But, you know, is it really relevant to your life? Or would you spend, let's say, 10 minutes to read something, or 5 minutes, whatever, however long it would take you, to, you know, pay attention to my material? That's really what it boils down to. Interesting, but irrelevant. Always try to be relevant, again, because there's so much content out there. Okay, one could say you don't have to read it all or consume it all, but still, I still think you have to put some thought into the relevance of what you do. So that's my word of the day, and I hope this comes up well, because like the light is not streaming in as it normally does from the eastern flank. Wishing you and yours the very best of things.